Welcome to week 12 of Bible Studies for Life. We're almost to the end of the quarter, finishing up here in Matthew chapter 24 today, and then next week we'll be in Matthew 25 for the last week of the quarter, looking at these events surrounding the return of Christ and how we should respond, how we should live because of his imminent return being there. And boy, this week we're really going to look at that. What should we be doing? What should our lives look like because Jesus is returning soon? Okay, so before we look into Matthew 24, I want to remind you to be sure and subscribe to the channel, like and share with others. Comment if you've got questions, put those in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. Okay, let's dive in. Chapter 24. Therefore, be alert. Therefore, because he could come at any time, because nobody knows when. Because, remember this from last week, right? Nobody knows the hour. Therefore, be alert, since you don't know what day your Lord is coming. You don't know. You don't know what day he's coming. So be alert, be ready. But you know this. If the homeowner had known what time the thief was coming, he would have stayed alert and not let his house be broken into. This is why you are also to be ready, because the Son of Man is coming in an hour you do not expect. Just, if you knew when the thief was going to show up, you'd be ready to greet him with, whatever. You had a 45, a bat, or whatever it was you were going to greet him with, but you would be prepared, right? So you couldn't break into your house. But you don't know. So you always have to be prepared. If you knew that the thief was going to show up on Monday night, then you'd lock your doors Monday night, but the rest of the week I'm not going to lock my doors because he's not coming. He's coming on Monday. But you don't know when he's coming, so you lock your doors every night, right? You always do that because you're trying to be prepared. He could come at any time. Well, listen. The Lord is coming at any hour. You don't know when, so you also are to be ready. Be ready. There is no warning, get ready. It's be ready. The Son of Man's coming at an hour you do not expect. I've often thought, that if they would ever get to a moment when nobody in the world, in the entire world, was expecting Jesus to come back at that moment, that's when he'd come. So nobody could say, I knew he was coming then. Right? I don't know. That's probably not right, but I always kind of thought that about that verse, right? If there was just a moment when nobody in the 7 billion people of the world thought this is when Jesus would come back, that's when he'd come. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his master has put in charge of his household to give them food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom the master finds doing his job when he comes. Okay, here's the question. What do you do? How do you live in anticipation of the return of Christ? How do you live being alert, right? And this idea of being alert. How do you live being alert? Who is this faithful and wise servant? What is that faithful and wise servant doing? You know what? He is doing his job when the master returns. He's doing what he's called to. When the Lord comes, you're doing what God has called you to. There's always a question. I remember when I was in seminary, we would ask the question, if you knew that Jesus was coming back at the end of the month, what would you do differently between now and then? What would be different in your life between now and the day that he returns? And the answer ought to be, I'd be doing what I'm doing because I'm trying to be obedient to the best of my ability today. And so what I'm doing would not change between now and then because this is what God's called me to. It wouldn't be, if I'm in school and then I find out Jesus is coming back at the end of the month, I don't suddenly leave school and start going and doing something else. God's called me to be in school, then I need to be where God's called me to be, right? That's what I need to be doing. So that when he returns, I'm doing what he told me to do. To be the faithful servant, the wise servant. You're found doing your job. So then the question is not, what would you be doing differently if you knew Jesus was coming back? The question is, are you doing today what you know that God has called you to do? Are you active where God has placed you, serving him faithfully as best that you can, serving him? And if so, then you are right where God wants you to be, so that when he returns, he should find you doing what you're supposed to be doing. We shouldn't think that there are some things that are always better than other things, in the sense that, if you want to, when he comes back, you ought to be witnessing, or you ought to be on the mission field, or you ought to be helping the poor, or you ought to be doing this. listen, if that's what God's called you to do at this moment, then that's what you ought to be doing. But if God's called you to be doing something else, then that's what you ought to be doing, right? Be where He has called you to be, doing what He's called you to do, being the person He's called you to be when He returns. This is the faithful and wise servant. Truly, I tell you, He will put him in charge of all his possessions. This person, they gain that. But if that wicked servant says in his heart, my master's delayed, and starts to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with drunkards, that servant's master will come on a day he does not expect him, at an hour he does not know, and he will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, now we just got real, didn't we? This wicked servant says in his heart, and you see the difference here. You've got the faithful and wise servant, and then here you've got the wicked servant. The wicked servant says in his heart, he's not coming. He's not going to be back for a while. I'm just going to do what I want to do. I'm just going to live my life the way I want to live my life. I'm going to take advantage of whatever I can take advantage of. I'm going to do what makes me happy. I'm going to fulfill my desires. Right? When the master comes back, that servant's in trouble. Right? He thought he'd have time to put the house back in order. He'd get some warning, but he's not going to get that warning. It's not going to happen. Right? And this person will be cut up and assigned to a place with hypocrites, or where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. You hear this? Jesus suddenly takes, obviously you're not going to cut the servant up, right? You know, that's not what's going to happen. You're going to fire him. And you're going to cut him up in pieces and send him to hell. This is the place where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, that's hell, right? You know what he's describing here is a person who plays at their Christianity, but they think they've got time. They're not really worried about it. And for them, it's not a relationship with Christ. It's a relationship to a religion. And they're related to the religion, and that means I've got to do stuff, but I don't have to do it right now. I'll do it later. I'll have time. I'll do that later when it's more convenient, or when I feel like it more, or when I think I'm really got to do it now because I got to straighten up my act because Jesus can come back at any moment and I want to be found doing the right things. That's not relationship with Him. That's a relationship to a religion. And he says this person is a hypocrite, and they will be assigned to hell. About that. It's quite a stark difference, isn't it? This person here, right, is blessed. This servant whom the master finds doing his job when he comes, but this person here is cursed when the master comes and he's not ready. Be ready. You go back here, right? Where is it? Be ready. Be ready. Because you don't know when he's going to come. I hope that helps. This whole chapter has been about the return of Christ, right? In this need to serve Him faithfully, to trust Him, to know that the Lord's in control, and in the end, to be ready, to be found doing that which God has called you to do, to being found faithful, serving faithfully, always. Thanks for watching. Hope that's helped. God bless you. Thank you so much for teaching. I really appreciate those of you that are stepping out to try to share the gospel with others. Be sure and share this, like, comment, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. If you got questions, ask them and we'll try to answer them as best we can. We'll see you next time.